Hi, Leo. Welcome to your 2019 astrological overview. It's Raina, and this is going to be a reading looking at some of the long-range transits that are going to impact you in various houses in the coming year, but also may be already doing so. And I'm going to differentiate between this type of reading and my monthly astrological readings, where I go into more of the shorter range transits. I don't want to repeat myself, and besides, it would take way too long to combine everything, talking about a whole year. So I have to pick and choose, and I've decided to focus on the bigger picture, looking at the long range transits for the most part. I am going to talk about the eclipses because as new and full moons, they tend to pack more of a punch. But the other thing that I want to say is that this is for Leo sun and Leo rising signs, and it is a general forecast. I know a lot of you already understand that, but for those of you who assume that every Leo person is going to be experiencing the same transits, no, that's not true. In the sun, for the sun sign, it's your solar chart, and that is dependent on the date of birth, and especially with the natal chart, the time of birth. And these are all different for each Leo. So some of the transits may be in a different house altogether from what I'm saying, and that's okay. That's just how it has to be. I can't get into all the different permutations. If you'd like a private reading, I am offering a discount of 20% off of my hour-long natal chart interpretations. And I do go into some of the same stuff in that reading, as well as looking at your natal chart and where the planets are distributed there and what kind of signs are in some of your inner planets and how that affects you as a person, your personality traits, your talents, and things like that. Patterns that may be in your life that can help or hinder you, and just looking at maybe your attitudes towards life and examining those. So please keep that in mind as I go through all of this, okay? Now, what I think for 2019 is going to be very crucial is your sixth house, which deals with health and work matters, the practical matters of life. In the universal chart, this is Virgo's house. So Virgo-esque kinds of issues. With health, I always think of kind of the crunchy granola variety of things going on, because Virgo is an earth sign. It's also an herbalist, if I'm not mistaken. So alternative medicine and even vegetarian diets. Now, I read that somewhere. I really believe I'm not just pulling this out of my of an orifice of mine or anything like that. I really think I read this somewhere. And sorry about that. I'm a little bit loopy because I actually did this reading earlier in the day, Leo, and it was 40 minutes long, and I erased it. So that was a brilliant move on my part. So I'm in a little bit of a silly mood right now. But yeah, so the sixth house is about health in general, but because of the nature of Virgo and what I think of Virgo and what I've read about it, it does tend to be this natural living and things like that. And also, but in general, we would just say health, and also your service to others, okay? And this is service that can be volunteer work, but it can be, your paid job. But we're looking at it from the standpoint of what you're offering others. The 10th house is the house of career, and that's your reputation. So to me, it's more about what you're doing and how it is impacting others and what they're thinking about you as a result. So to me, the ego kind of can creep into that house. I'm not saying that the 10th house is all about your ego, but it is about your public image. And the 6th house is the house of the servant. So to me, there's more of work from the standpoint of just offering your gifts to others, and maybe like a purity associated with it. Because Virgo is associated with perfectionism, I would definitely include that with this house. But really, the themes of it can be about how you view work and how this view has been changing over the last 10 years that Pluto has been in this house, in Capricorn. And now Saturn has joined that party since December of 2017. And now you have Saturn in that house. And that can add a sense of duty to the issue of work. Now, an example would be, let's say 10 years ago, you had some high-powered career, and for whatever reason, because of the economy, because let's get real here, 10 years ago, it's almost 11 years because it was January of 2008, and that was exactly when it all came crashing down in the United States in terms of our economy. It was right at that time, at the beginning of 2008. Actually, I think it was December of 2007, like right before the official transit. But that's when it all came crashing down. And what if you were in a career that was very much a lucrative one, and you couldn't get a job after that? Maybe you were just totally connected to that, and you were kind of wandering around, and you are working retail, and you're making a fraction of what you used to make. I'm just bringing up like some scenario that could possibly be true for at least a few of you, and maybe every other sign. But the point being that the 6th house, I think, is a house of humility in terms of service, because when you serve, you are supposed to have humility. Think of somebody who is a servant to a wealthy person. Even in 2018, there are still servants. What if that servant had attitude and acted like they were too good to serve somebody else in that fashion? One of the major qualifications for being somebody's servant, or I don't even like that word, but that the assistant, if you will, to somebody in their home, is that there has to be a sense of willingness to help and enjoying helping others, and humility attached to it. So many times you get helped by somebody and you can tell they resent it, and it really kind of taints the experience. But maybe you've had to learn how to do things without this kind of grandiose praise, or kind of like having your ego get puffed up because of that, and you're just into that pure exchange of energy. And that's what helping other people is. So with Pluto and with Saturn, there can be lessons, tests that you have to endure. And now we have the South Node in that house. So the North Node is in Cancer since the first week in November, and therefore the South Node is in that 6th house, and that is your karmic past. And for Leo being a fixed sign, you may be tempted to kind of cling to whatever is familiar in your life and go back to it over and over again. And so in this case, it would be doing things the way you've always done them. And with the 6th house, it could be being a workaholic, being too concerned about keeping a job and not realizing that in some instances you have to say goodbye. If you're not being honored, then you're not being appreciated. And that means that the other person, your employer, isn't really seeing the good that you are bringing the situation, and that isn't good for you either. Doesn't mean you have to be constantly praised, but we all need that kind of feeling that we are doing our jobs well. And when people kind of withhold that, a lot of times I think that's done by design, because that they know, there are certain people that know that if they withhold any kind of positive strokes, that it's going to possibly make the person feel uncertain. Like, am I doing a good job? Are they about to get rid of me? What's going on here? And it kind of throws the employee off kilter, off balance. But again, this is something that each person has to see for themselves. And with all of this intense energy in that 6th house, the concept of work is really undergoing major transformation for you with the Pluto influence. And I gave you one example of what could happen, of being knocked down from this lofty position and feeling like you're forced to work a job that you're overqualified for, that is not high status in society, and so on and so forth. And even though on the surface this may seem like a bad thing, the truth is that there is so much you can gain from that sort of scenario. And actually somebody wrote a book about how he improved his life by working at Starbucks. And I know, there are probably going to be criticisms about that particular corporation by some people. But the point is that I forgot, I think it was that scenario where he was working in Wall Street or something like that, and he just lost his job. And that was the only job he could get at the time. And I can't remember, but he wrote a book about his experiences. And he was like an older guy. I don't know if he was in his 50s or even 60s, but he couldn't find another job in a timely fashion. And he decided to work at Starbucks. I think I have it right. I looked through the book and it seemed very compelling. I was reading some of it, but I don't know if I have my facts straight on that. But yeah, I mean, that does happen where people have to experience a fall from grace in a sense. And, it might just be based on the issues within the company and not because of anything they did that was wrong, that they either got laid off or their hours got cut. But yeah, he feels like it was a very positive experience to go through that. And the thing about the work situation is that that's only one aspect of our lives. And we don't have to work in order to prove that we are worthy. I think that is a lot of times this unconscious motivation, besides the survival instinct, is just, I need to show that I am productive and therefore worthy. And everyone has a role to play in life, in this theater called life. And whether you're working at a job or just existing on this planet, I don't think that anyone is not doing what they should be doing. But with Leo, there is this strong leadership ability, and that may play into what your lessons are. It's going to differ from person to person. And same thing with health matters. This may differ as well. And some people may not even feel like they're going through anything along those lines. But understand that there may be really big lessons to learn that are helpful, because with Pluto is also the exploration of power, and conversely, lacking power. And when you think about it, some people who become seriously ill, they lose the ability to take care of themselves sometimes, and they have to relinquish that control. They don't have a choice. So that illness, if you will, allows them the ability to surrender to another person and allow that person to help them. And that can be very challenging for some people. So it's very important to examine what these influences are in your life. Sometimes with Saturn in the 6th house, you may feel like there isn't that much work available to you. If you're somebody who is in between jobs, or maybe if you're thinking of leaving your current job, but you look for jobs in your related field and it seems like they're less plentiful than usual. I think for you, going into 2020 and that whole year, that you will find that this will be lessened because Jupiter will join that 6th house. And that means that it could be a situation where you find work is more plentiful. But Saturn in the 6th house, I don't feel is bad at all. I think that it can actually help to organize you on every level, organize your thoughts about what it is that you want to do. What is your dream life on a practical level? Because the 6th house can be your daily schedule. And even if you're somebody who works a 9-to-5 job and you think, I don't have a daily schedule, my time commitments are eating up most of my day. But if you aspire to live a different type of lifestyle and you just feel like you have no time to plan things, to research things, then you have to be even more committed to being able to do this. And this involves really looking at possible times when you can utilize that time for something to build a future with. And this involves perhaps getting up earlier, or maybe even if you want to exercise but you just feel so beat after work, that if you live within a few miles of your business, that you say, I'm going to walk home, even in the winter, even when there's snow, or I'm going to bike home, or I'm, things that you can combine different trips. If you like to take walks as your exercise, but you don't tend to go anywhere, you just walk to the park, walk to the store, and carry the groceries home. That's a great way to build up your muscles. So just taking a very practical approach that Virgo is all about. That sounds good, but it's going to be a transformation. It doesn't happen overnight. And like I said, we're talking about a 15-year transit. With the North Node in the 12th house, this could be some kind of destiny for you, Leo, in the next 18 months that connects you to the spiritual side of life. Now, even if you're somebody who already thinks of yourself as spiritual, you may meet a teacher that is very influential for you. I don't believe that anything that happens, it's the outside world doing it. I think that these are just players in our unfoldment, and that they come along at certain junctures of our life to help shape it. And if you think about, if you have a partner that you have been with for years, then you know that the time when you met that person was probably a very important part of your journey anyway. I'm not talking about somebody you've just been dating for 3 months and you don't know if you're going to continue to see them. I'm talking about if you have a proven relationship and it's lasted years, and you like reflect on when you met this person, it might have been at a time when it was very important for you to meet that person, and that's where the destiny came in. So the same thing applies here. You may be going through a lot of transition. You just had a series of eclipses in your sign, in your opposite sign, Aquarius. The last one is coming in January. I'll get to that in a minute. But you've been going through a lot of changes, Leo. So, with yourself and with a committed partnership, perhaps. And so this indicates that you are possibly at a crossroads in some way. You've had the North Node transiting through your sign, and now it's in Cancer. It goes backwards. So, yeah. And it's just a matter of, even if you don't want to get into that right now, keeping an open mind, plus, anything that you hear that is a spiritual kind of teaching, to at least consider it and not just turn your back on it, because it could be very helpful to you. You might even look back on this years from now and say, wow, I did this thing and I met this person, or I went to this spiritual center that I found out about in a random way, and it turned out to be that I met my tribe. I met the people that really nourished me at this time. I had friendships with people and I didn't feel a strong connection to them anymore, and I feel a very strong connection to these people. So it can really enhance your life in many areas, but particularly in this 12th house, there can be some faded things that are of a positive nature that help you to maybe let go of addiction or let go of feelings of victimization if they exist. So the other thing that I want to say before I go into some dates is that Jupiter is in your 5th house of love and creativity. It's the house that you rule, actually, Leo. So I think that is very serendipitous too. And of course, Sagittarius is a fellow fire sign, so it forms a nice trine to you. And that can be nice as well. And Jupiter in the 5th house, if you are single at the moment, you could be really open to relationships that are not necessarily wanting to settle down. Maybe you're just wanting to play the field. And because Jupiter is there, you have more opportunities than usual, because Jupiter is the planet of luck and expansion. So you may find that you have a lot to choose from in the way of potential partners. If you're an artist, this can make you incredibly prolific during this period with Jupiter in Sagittarius in that 5th house. You benefit from any kind of creative self-expression. You're lucky with it. If you have been wanting to conceive a child, I think that is also a possibility, because the 5th house is the house of children, but including conceiving children. And so maybe that's something that you will find is very lucky for you, that the timing is perfect and things like that. So as the month begins, in January, I should say, the month of January, we have a solar eclipse on the 5th. And this is in that 6th house that I already told you, as so many other influences. And so a solar eclipse is a very powerful new moon. And in the house of work, if you're looking for a job, you may find that you have many opportunities. Maybe not on the 6th of the month, on the 5th of the month, but in the month or 40 days that follows particularly. And you can feel like, once again, you're in control of your life. If you felt like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And this might have even been something, because we did have a full moon here. It wasn't a lunar eclipse, but it was a full moon back in late June. And that might have been the time when you were trying to scramble because you got laid off or something along those lines. Who knows? But now it's like it's time for you to now get ahead and experience alignment in this house of work or house of employment. And if it's of health, maybe you're feeling a lot stronger. On the 21st, we have an eclipse, lunar eclipse in Leo. So obviously this is you, and this is like ending a way of life, maybe a way that you present yourself. Maybe it's even on the physical level. Again, with the health angle of this year, you may be trying to do something. Maybe you're trying to get your body in better shape or do some kind of sprucing up of your physical appearance. I don't know. But even the way that you act could be featured with this. That's for sure. Transformation. And, the thing about it with the lunar eclipse, we're talking about something it's almost coming from outside of you, where events come about that shape you into doing these kinds of behaviors. So it's not that just necessarily that you're saying to yourself, I think I'm going to start working out. You may find that because you've had health issues that you need to change your ways. Maybe you've been too sedentary and you decide, I'm going to walk everywhere. I'm going to walk to the store. I'm not going to drive a car. I'm just going to walk. And you just it kind of dawns on you that you need to change. And maybe because of relationships, it could be from any angle that this would prompt you, but it's not really you doing it. These events that occur are the ones that lead the way. Because with the eclipses, it's like things beyond your control. Now, if that makes you nervous, it shouldn't, because I've had experiences myself looking at my chart and having eclipses and being like, oh boy, this is going to be great. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really know if that really happened, if there was an influence there. So whether it really even occurs, I guess it depends on other factors. I personally think that something is going on with you, with your possibly physically even, where you want to change certain things. And so this allows you to. This gives you that kind of kick in the pants, so to speak. And one thing that I want to mention that's actually before that lunar eclipse is that the day after the solar eclipse happens on January 5th, which, by the way, is very good for all of us, no matter what sign, because it's coming off of the new year. It's just 5 days after the new year, when we're already feeling that kind of renewal and wanting to better ourselves. But like, for instance, last year, I can't remember if we had like a Mercury retrograde coming into the new year. It was either last year or the year before that, but we've had, definitely this past year, we've had a lot of retrograde activity because we had Venus and Mars both retrograding, and that really kind of slows things down. And we're going to be getting into the new year with a lot of momentum with this solar eclipse, because it's not just a new moon, it's a solar eclipse. So the universe is telling us all systems are go now. And again, that's in your 6th house of work and health. And so the very next day, Uranus goes direct in Aries, a fellow fire sign to you. And Uranus, several months ago, started retrograding after it had entered Taurus, and that was in your 10th house of career, and it went back into your 9th house where it had been for 7 years. So until March, you have Uranus in Aries in that 9th house, and that is something that is very good for matters that are concerning any kind of like, I would say especially like spiritual matters. So just like that 12th house in the North Node, Uranus is an intuitive planet. I mean, it has a reputation for being quite erratic and upsetting the apple cart because it's kind of eccentric and it doesn't like to conform and it's rebellious, and all of that can make it not want to behave. But one of the good things about Uranus is that it's associated with I was going to say intuition, but then I wanted to say intuitive tendencies or areas that are associated with intuition, or we could even say like psychic exploration or the occult, like astrology is associated with the sign of Aquarius, the sign that Uranus rules. So who knows? Maybe that's something you're getting into. If you have been interested in spiritual matters, you might start getting into this type of exploration where you're feeling very intuitive. Instead of like with the 9th house, a lot of times we're talking about dogma, the organized religions, and because it has to do with your life philosophy. But this is bringing in the kind of extrasensory perception into that God house. And so when Uranus goes direct on January 6th, then all of the planets are direct. And this is going to be true until I believe it's early March when we have a Mercury retrograde. So we're talking about a good 2 months and or thereabouts. And that's really wonderful to have that at the beginning of the year, because then we feel like, oh, good, I'm going to press forward on some of the things that the ideas I may have come up with in 2018 and maybe even tried to implement, but they kind of didn't go very far. So definitely be aware of that. And let's see what else I wanted to say. Well, on March 6th, Uranus goes back into Taurus, where it entered in mid-May, and it will be in Taurus for 7 years or so. I can't tell you the end date because I don't have that information in front of me, but you can just count on it being there for almost the next decade. And this is going to be your 10th house of career. So for Leos, your career sector is about to go through a lot of change. And if you're the kind of person, again, as I characterized earlier, the Leo that is like wanting everything to stay the same, you might suffer because you might be too dependent on trying to keep everything as it has been. And it just may not be that time for you in your life where that is going to be the case, where you may have to kind of be very flexible. That doesn't come easily to somebody like you. So that is something that, while it may seem a bit frustrating, it actually can be quite good. If you're a Leo person who is in the performing arts or some kind of like show businessy kind of a career, you could, shoot to sudden fame out of the blue and not even know like how it all happened, because that is how unpredictable Uranus is. And your 10th house is your reputation in the world. So Uranus is like this loose cannon, but a loose cannon, I mean, even though it's like it's a force to be reckoned with, whether it's easy to handle or control or not, it still can be something that is very exciting, and you never know what's going to happen. And there's a good part to that because it can really liven up your life. Even if you feel like, you think you're going to do a certain type of career and go down that path, and maybe you have a change of heart. Maybe it's not even the outside world. You just become very, suddenly changing on a whim what you want to do. And perhaps this isn't like you to be like that, but that could be very good because by trying on different hats, you might find one that actually fits you, that resonates with you. And the other thing that is connected to this 10th house is or connected to Uranus, again, is this situation with intuitive emphasis. So who knows, maybe you make a career in some kind of intuitive art. And that would be very interesting too. On July 2nd, there is a solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Cancer in that 12th house. So that can be a time of really exploring mysticism and the spiritual path. And maybe it is connected to your career goals, because remember that these two houses, we have, they're forming a sextile, which is a friendly angle, and they are in compatible signs. We got Cancer and Taurus. So that's wonderful. And you may decide that you have these gifts that you want to share, healing, psychic ability that you feel that you could share with others and help them on their path. And you start something new along the line. Now, it may kind of like come to you since it's a solar eclipse. And then a couple weeks later, on July 16th, we have the lunar eclipse at 24 degrees of Capricorn in the opposite house, in the 6th house of work. It is possible, and this would be quite interesting, that maybe you are leaning towards a totally different type of work, but you're still working a day job, and you want to quit, but you fear quitting, and it's done for you. The universe takes it out of your life. And it may be scary, lunar eclipses can just bring things out of your life, and this could be with the workplace. But when that happens, then you're free to pursue your passion. But also, sometimes this could be like you're working towards something and it really has come to a crescendo, it's like at its highest point. And maybe that can even indicate some kind of a big promotion at work. And likewise, something with health matters. Maybe you realize what has been the connection between the mind, or I would say the energetic self, the 12th house, kind of like your soul influence on your health, your spiritual influence on your health, or even the 12th house is the mental health and the physical health, and seeing how that has affected you, and that can help to heal you because you come to this realization. But yes, I do see that there are a lot of practical matters, but at the same time, spiritual influences for Leo in 2019. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is in addition to some of the shorter transits, like Mars through the signs, Venus through the signs, and influences like that. And please stay tuned to my channel if you want to get those monthly influences. But at least I'm giving you a taste of the bigger picture. And I hope that you enjoyed this. And again, if you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Have a great 2019, Leo. Take care. Bye.